It is the morning after the Elite Eight, episode 29 of TMA. I appreciate you joining me. I'm your host, Jared Smith. What a weekend in sports. The agenda, obviously, we're going to recap what we saw this week in the NCAA tournament. We're going to spin it forward to the Final Four. I'll give you some betting notes, not only from the tournament, but also some games happening this week. Good news. You don't have to wait until Saturday if you want to bet on more college basketball. I will also briefly touch on the first week of the Major League Baseball season, most notably the automatic balls and strikes, the new craze sweeping the baseball world. We'll touch on that at the end of the show, and then we will talk about what the next month will look like. March Madness is about to end. Final days of March are here. That means it's NFL draft season. Very excited for that. But first things first, an instant classic between Duke and UConn in the Elite Eight, the East Regional Final on Sunday night. UConn was down 19 at one point in the first half. They were down 17 with 17 minutes remaining in the game. And it was an absolute thriller in our nation's capital. So I guess the first place to start is you feel for Duke a little bit. Of course, last year, and I know there's a lot of Duke haters out there. I get it. But until you're on the other side of one of those beats, I don't really think you understand, especially considering that it's mostly freshmen and underclassmen on that Duke roster. They had that game won. And UConn definitely they couldn't make a 3-all game until it seemed like the last few minutes. And then they were able to make the play, make the deflection. Braylon Mullins from the logo, iconic shot. That shot will be replayed in every promo, March Madness for years, right? You wanted madness, well, you got it. The crazy thing about that, number one seeds were 134-0 when leading by 15 or more at half. And now they're 134-1. UConn culture, third Final Four in the last 4 years. Danny Hurley, incredible run. But Duke, again, up 9 on Houston in the Final Four with 2 minutes to go last year, up 17 with 17 minutes to go in the second half of the Elite Eight this year, and they lose both games. So a lot of soul-searching to do, a crushing loss for Duke, but now we've got a set Final Four. And if you want to go back and kind of recap what we saw in the Elite Eight over the weekend, Iowa-Illinois was fun for a half. Iowa didn't make any threes in the second half. Once they kind of ran out of gas there, you saw Illinois really pulled away. Elite size. I love the Stojakovic kid. They've got some incredible freshman sensations. It was really the year of the bigs in college basketball. Illinois and Arizona, Michigan. I mean, they just have an incredible amount of size and skill in the front court, and you really saw Illinois run away from Iowa in the second half of that game. Michigan and Arizona cut above, right? We talked about it on last week's show. It was actually 2 weeks ago. The good teams in college basketball, a historically good year for these elites. Michigan, Arizona, and Duke were the three elites. Half of them, or 2 out of the 3, went to the Final Four. Michigan and Arizona head and shoulders above Tennessee and Purdue. Those are clearly the best teams in the field. They will meet on Saturday night in the main event, and it's going to set up a historic matchup in the Final Four. So the Final Four is set. Michigan opened a 1-point favorite against Arizona, high total 157. Illinois opened a 2.5-point favorite against UConn with a total of 140. My initial betting thoughts for these two games, probably going to bet UConn as a dog, probably going to bet Michigan. Not because I'm overly confident that those teams are going to win. I think at this stage it is a coin flip, especially the Michigan-Arizona game. I mean, again, that's Goliath versus Goliath. Those are two heavyweights. The reason that I'm going to bet UConn and Michigan is my futures portfolio. So I'm a big winner on Arizona. I was slowly, right, if you've been following me on Patreon, if you've been following me in the Discord, you know that I've been using, BetMGM's done an awesome job giving you a 25% odds boost every day that there's tourney basketball games happening. So 4 days last week, actually 6 days last week, right? You got Tuesday, Wednesday playing games, Thursday through Sunday, and then this week, Thursday through Sunday. So you had an opportunity to have 10 different 25% odds boosts, and you can max it up, for me, $100 on each bet. So what I've been doing, I haven't used them all on futures bets, but I used a lot of them on futures bets, and I've used a lot of them on Arizona. I've got a bunch of Arizona at over 4-1. 3 units actually, over $300 on Arizona at over 4-1. So I'm a big winner if Arizona wins. I also got Illinois at 7-1. So I'm a slight winner if Illinois is able to win. And I have one slice of Michigan at 4-1. So I'm basically slightly down, almost even if Michigan wins. And obviously, I've nothing exposed to UConn. I did not think UConn was going to make the Final Four. So if UConn wins, I would lose everything. That being said, I'm going to need some UConn exposure in my portfolio. I'll probably take some UConn money line on Saturday. I'll probably take a little bit of Michigan money line to hedge against my Arizona future. I don't know where the lines are going to move. My guess is Michigan won't get bet up too much because Arizona, ratings-wise, is right there. And Arizona's looked really good. I do think Arizona, at their ceiling, is the best team in the field. However, they didn't play to their ceiling for 40 minutes against Purdue. They only played to it for 20. And I think if they play a half like they did in the first half against Purdue, against Michigan, I don't know if they're going to be able to flip the switch against the Michigan team that is significantly more talented and bigger and stronger than Purdue. And I know Purdue beat Michigan in the Big Ten title. I get it. But Michigan was still a 4.5, 5-point favorite in that game. So I just think Michigan's more balanced, more experienced than Arizona. But I think Arizona's got a higher ceiling. We'll see if they can play to that ceiling for 40 minutes. Should be an awesome game. It's going to be a historic game between Michigan and Arizona. Those are two of the best teams in the Ken Pom era in the last 25 years. And they're playing each other in the Final Four. It kind of reminds me, and I'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about the UConn-Illinois game for a minute. Also should be very fun. I think the fact that UConn survived, if you want to even call it that, when Karaban had his worst game of the tourney should bode very well. What are the odds he's going to go basically 0 from 3 again in the Final Four? I would say probably not. Huskies fans should be very optimistic about the fact that Karaban had his worst game of the tourney and UConn still won. Illinois is very talented. I think they're the more talented team. They're also the younger team in their first Final Four with this group, whereas UConn's been there before, right? Karaban's won the national championship. Danny Hurley's won 2 of them in the last 4 years. Will the moment be too big for Illinois? I think that's the initial question I have about the Illini. I think if the Illini play to their ceiling, I think they win that game. That's why they opened a favorite. If I had to rank the Final Four coaches, I would put Dusty May at the top. I'd put Danny Hurley second, and I'd say Lloyd and Underwood are T3. I don't really see a huge difference between those two guys. Again, they're in their first Final Fours. Whereas Danny Hurley obviously has been there, done that, and Dusty May has now taken FAU and Michigan to the Final Four in the last 3 years. Pretty damn impressive. Now the main event, right? Arizona, Michigan, it feels a lot like the NFC Championship game. What do I mean by that? So Rams, Seahawks, if you go back and you watch the NFC Championship game from January, that was the Super Bowl. The winner of that game was likely going to win the Super Bowl, and that's how it turned out. Seattle won it pretty handily. They didn't win the NFC Championship game handily. That game was back and forth, could have gone either way. Whereas the first game on Saturday between Illinois and UConn, I don't want to rule out one of those teams winning, because once you get into the championship game, we've seen this time and time again, right? NC State over Houston right back in the 80s, 1983, the Derek Whittenberg shot. That was an air ball, and NC State puts it in, right? They did the 30 for 30 on it. That's an iconic shot. You've had upsets in the national championship game before. However, Arizona, Michigan are the filet mignon. And it's going to take a mighty effort from the winner of UConn, Illinois to win on Monday night. They're going to be an underdog in that game, probably by more than a possession, especially if either Arizona or Michigan win with margin and the UConn-Illinois game is tight. Arizona, Michigan will be a 3+ point favorite in that championship, and whoever wins that Duke-Illinois or the UConn-Illinois game is going to be fighting an uphill battle, and they're going to be facing the number 1 rated team in the country. So I don't want to rule out an upset in the championship game, but it's going to be tough sledding. We'll get to that on Sunday night, right? Final Four next Saturday. We'll come back on the air Sunday night. We'll break it all down. We'll get you a pick for the championship game on Monday night. It's always fun at this stage of the tournament, right? 66 out of the 67 games, or 64 out of the 67 games are in the books. So pretty much the tournament's over in terms of the data. Here is how the records break down, and here's how all the interesting nuggets that I would like to share with you. So preseason coaches poll. UConn actually had the highest rating of all the Final Four teams in the preseason coaches poll. They were 4th. Michigan was 7th. Arizona 13th. Illinois 14th. This is interesting to me, but not important. Second straight year, a team that started in the top 3 of the preseason coaches poll failed to make the Final Four. Purdue, Houston, Florida this year. Last year, Kansas, Alabama, UConn. All 6 of those teams, top 3 in the preseason coaches poll, failed to make the Final Four. Doesn't always pay to be in the top 3 of the coaches poll. Doesn't always pay to be one of the elite teams heading into the season, because it's really hard to make the Final Four, guys. You got to win 4 games in 2 weeks, and sometimes, as Duke and John Shire are learning the hard way, it doesn't always fall in your favor. Sometimes you get an unlucky bounce. Ball kind of bounces in a funny way, and that's why it's madness. It's a one-and-done tournament, and it's one of the best damn tournaments. I mean, I said this, 2 weeks ago when people were complaining, or last weekend when people were complaining that there wasn't enough madness. I'm like, just wait. just wait till these great teams all play each other in the later rounds, and then you're going to see the cream rise to the top. And you got that this weekend. And I know not all the games were close. There were some blowouts. But I would say about half the games were really intriguing down to the last minute. You had Texas and Purdue come down to basically buzzer beater. St. John's and Duke was down to the wire. Iowa and Nebraska, you had 4 guys on the floor for Nebraska. You had the Iowa-Illinois game was relatively close till the second half. Like, you just had these really intriguing matchups once you got past that initial round. Like, yes, the early rounds of the tournament are going to be tougher from here on out. I just don't think you're going to see as many Cinderellas. However, there are some really good teams in college basketball, and now these teams are all going to be facing each other in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 and Final Four. And you got your madness. You had to wait until the Elite 8, but you got the signature moment of the tournament. Sometimes it happens early. Sometimes it happens late. In this particular case, it happened in the final game, in the final breath of the Elite 8 on Sunday night. ATS record by conference. Big 12, 12-6. Pretty impressive. And, of course, Arizona in the Final Four. Big 10 went 16-10 against the number. Michigan and Illinois both make the Final Four out of the Big 10. Big East went 5-3. You get UConn, your Big East representative in the Final Four. SEC 13-11. ACC 3-11 against the spread. We talked about this last week. ACC really struggling to separate themselves. I really consider them the caboose of the Power Four. And compared to the Big 12 and the Big 10, I think it's obvious that the ACC is a step below. This really stood out to me. After the round of 64, the SEC and the ACC went a combined 6-13 against the spread. Big 10, Big East, Big 12 went a combined 21-11 against the spread after the round of 64. So after you faced the shit teams in the early round and things condensed and you started to face the teams that won and the teams that were, deserved to be there, really, and were the better teams in the tournament, you really saw the SEC and the ACC struggle. And you really saw the Big 10, the Big East, and the Big 12 overachieve the number and exceed expectations. So really the difference between those conferences right now, the SEC feels like a drive for show, putt for dough kind of conference. They look really good on paper coming into the tournament. They're long, they're strong, they're big, they're athletic, but then when push comes to shove, they underachieve their number and they don't get teams into the Final Four. And the ACC just looks like they're they need a breakfast ball. They need a mulligan off the tee. Really struggling for the ACC to find footing in this tournament. Some of the other betting records in this tournament, the first half unders really struggled, guys. I know that's a very popular wager. The SGP guys, Sports Gambling Podcast guys, have championed that trend. Really struggled in this tournament. 26-38, 40% for the first half unders. To be fair, they only bet the round of 64. I don't think that they continue it throughout the rest of the tournament. But if your hypothesis for this tournament and prior tournaments is that when things tighten up, the scoring slows down, like that, we just didn't see that. $100 better. If you bet $100 on every first half under, you're down $1,500 in this tournament, minus 24% ROI. That being said, while the first half under struggled, you would think the full game overs did pretty well, but that's not the case. Full game overs, 32-30, 1-1, so basically flat for the tournament. And I think that really speaks to things tightening up in the second half, where the overs in the first half were very profitable. In the second half, that's when play tightens up, and unless you got a lot of fouls or overtime, that's when the possessions get more valuable, and that's when teams slow things down, where in the first half you saw a little bit more free-flowing. So I found that interesting, that the first half unders really struggled, but the full game overs were not profitable in this tournament. And that's just something to keep in mind going forward, that first half overs really is the way to go, and then you at some point try to get an under live. Like, that's really the best way to play these games. I did that with the Duke UConn game today. I mean, that game started out red hot. Duke didn't miss a shot in the first half. UConn couldn't hit a shot from the outside, but they were going inside. Taryn Reed was fantastic, made a lot of buckets inside, and then the first half total, the full game total, which was 135.5, got up to about 147, 148, and that's when I slammed the under, and it landed 145, 73-72 final. So I just think that's the best strategy for playing these totals is you wait to see how things start in the first half. If you get a first half that starts significantly hotter than expected, you bet a second half under. That's really, in my opinion, the best way to live bet these tournament games. The underdog money line strategy was a complete dud. 16-48. The underdogs went 16-48 straight up. 25% win rate. $100 bettors down over $2,000. Minus 32% ROI. Talked about this on last week's show. If I learned anything on this tournament, the gimmicks are a thing of the past. You're not just going to blindly bet $100 or whatever on one specific thing anymore. It's silly. It's not the right way to approach these games. The best way to approach these games is to do some actual work and to actually handicap the games. Or, what did I just say with the totals? Watch the first half, see if one team doesn't start super hot, and then bet the second half under. But you have to be engaged in the games. The reason that these gimmick strategies are popular is because you don't have to put any critical thinking behind it. You just wake up every day and you bet $100 on every underdog. It's mindless. It's zombie-like. But it's not profitable. It's not a sharp way to bet these games. You need to handicap the games. Do some research. Or watch the games and, like Double Dutch, find a good spot to get in on a live under. Because that's, to me, the best way to really attack this tournament. I mean, this tournament's beatable. It really is. The favorites were profitable in the tournament, ATS, 36-28, 56%. $100 bettors up $500, about 8% ROI. It's not, you're not going to get rich. But if you just blindly bet on every favorite, you did well. And that makes sense to me because, A, the favorites have been significantly, I don't want to say underpriced, but they've been outperforming the market because they've been much better than expected, right? It's been a pretty chalky tournament. The last couple years has been pretty chalky. But also, I just think in general, the public expects madness. So the sharper side, ironically, is the favorite. That's not the case in other sports. On an NFL Sunday, most of the time, the favorites are getting bet and the underdogs are the sharp side. But when you have an event called March Madness, the public tends to bet on madness. Not too much madness in the early stages of the tournament. The favorites did really well, right? We had that one day where they went 16-0 straight up on the money line. And overall for the tournament, ATS, they were very successful. Not very successful. They were profitable. And that was something that if you did bet blindly on every favorite, at least that is one gimmick, if you want to call it that, that did pay a little bit for you in this tournament. Again, I just think we need to put an end to the gimmicks and the content providers who are the ones putting that stuff out, it's okay if you do it. Just don't advise other people to do it. Like, I'm never going to tell someone how to spend their money. You want to wake up and put $1,000 on every underdog on the money line in March Madness, have a blast. You're going to lose, but have a blast. Just don't advise other people to do it and give them false hope that they're going to get rich, because they're not. They're probably going to be worse off at the end of the tournament than when they started. I do have good news, though. Good news. You do not have to wait until next Saturday, which is the Final Four, to bet on more college basketball. The Crown, not the Netflix show, which I do love, by the way, it starts on Wednesday here in Vegas. So what's the Crown? It's a relatively new college basketball tournament. It started last year. It's a pay-for-play tournament where teams are making money with each win. So it gets some of the high major teams involved. Last year, the overs went 4-0 in the first round. It slowed down a little bit in the later rounds. 10 games, the overs went 6-4. They went over the closing total by an average of 5 points. Why? Soft rims at the MGM Grand here in Vegas. Good sight lines for shooting. It's a dark backdrop. If you've ever been to a game in that arena, I've been to several. It's a good shooting arena with soft rims. And the games aren't as important, right? You're just playing for money. It's not the crowds aren't that big. It's a quiet arena, good shooting sight lines, and the rims are soft. So if you're following me on the Patreon, I gave out all 4 overs in the first round last week. Stanford WVU, Rutgers Creighton, Baylor Minnesota, Oklahoma Colorado. If you didn't bet them then, you missed out on some good CLV. Stanford WVU, I gave out over 133.5. It's up to 136.5. Rutgers Creighton, I gave out over 148.5. It's up to 151.5. Baylor Minnesota, over 146. It's now 149. Oklahoma Colorado, over 163.5. It's up to 165.5. So I got at least 2 points of CLV on every game. Got 3 points on 2 of them. Does that mean all 4 bets are going to win? Maybe. But I like my odds better on this side of the market than at the current number. That being said, I would still bet all 4 over. I think they're going at least 3-1. I think 4-0 is very possible. The NIT begins Thursday in Indy, or begins the semifinals. It's already been going on. The next wave of games begins Thursday in Indy. New Mexico, a 3.5-point favorite against Tulsa, total 160.5. Illinois State and Auburn. Auburn's a 6.5-point favorite, total 149.5. Don't have a strong opinion on either game. You would think Auburn wins. Probably covers. New Mexico. Tulsa's actually been pretty legit this year. I like that Tulsa team a lot. They've got this shooter, Barnstorm or something. He's been solid. I would probably lean with the dog on that one. High total game. But don't have a strong opinion on the NIT. The strong opinion I have, overs in the Crown. Hopefully they go 4-0 in the first round like they did last year, or at least the numbers that I got, hopefully they go 4-0. Sorry, I really don't care what numbers you got. If you're a subscriber on Patreon, you were given these bets on March 24th. So I really don't have a ton of sympathy for you because I gave them out, and you should have been on them then. Hopefully you still have time to get on them now. My guess is the totals keep rising before Wednesday. I don't expect them to go down. They've only gone up a couple of points, so don't expect them to go down. All right, that is the college basketball section of the show. This is going to be a pretty quick show. Again, I now that we're kind of in that off-season phase, I'm not going to do hour-long shows, or at least I'm not going to try to do hour-long shows, right? The March Madness show where the bracket was dropped was pretty long because I wanted to go through all my stuff. And last Sunday's show was short because I was gassed. This Sunday's show is probably going to be around the same time. I would expect around 30 minutes or so. I'll be relatively quick here, but I do have some thoughts on Major League Baseball opening week. The big story is the ABS system, not the anti-lock brake system, the automatic balls and strikes. What have we learned this week? Well, I think we learned that the umpires suck at calling balls and strikes. We kind of already knew that, but now it's confirmed. C.B. Buckner really is struggling. He is one of the umpires that I think is going to be in the crosshairs all season long. On Saturday, he had 8 challenges against him. 6 were overturned. Red Sox manager Alex Cora eventually got ejected in the 8th inning because they ran out of challenges. And Buckner he just continued to butcher the strike zone. So Richie Garcia, former baseball umpire, had this quote to say, "I think it's embarrassing about the ABS. Embarrassing to the umpires that are calling the game. Nobody likes to be humiliated in front of 30,000 or 40,000 people." Okay. My pushback to that, Richie, is I get humiliated all the time for giving my opinion on social media, and I don't get paid nearly as much as umpires do. So I'd be happy to switch jobs with them anytime. I mean, just if you're not good at your job, then you probably should be humiliated. If you say something stupid on social media, you're probably going to get ridiculed. If you make a bad call as an umpire, you're probably going to get ridiculed for it. That's just the way the world works. We don't live in a cushy sunshine and rainbow society. If you suck at something and you're doing it in the public eye and you're getting paid a lot of money, you're going to get ridiculed. That's part of the job. It comes with the territory. I say this all the time, like a lot of the higher level analysts, for example, actually, I don't want to get into the Dan Orlovsky stuff, but he's a good example of this. Like this week, he had this crazy opinion on Ty Simpson, and he's entitled to his opinion. But if you say something that's wildly out there and you're a high leverage employee at a major network, it's going to be under the microscope. That comes with the territory of being a high leverage employee. I wish people cared that much about my football opinions to where they blasted me for something that I said about my football opinions. In reality, if I say something like Ty Simpson's the best quarterback in the draft and I'm probably wrong or I'm going against the grain, nobody's going to care. Why? Because I don't work for ESPN. I'm not a high level analyst. If you are an MLB umpire and you get a call blatantly wrong, you're going to be humiliated for it. I mean, that is, to me, the privilege. Pressure is a privilege. So this idea that the umpires' feelings are going to get hurt because they miss calls is absurd. I think it is time for us to move on from umpires calling balls and strikes, period. Period, end of story. That ship has sailed. For years, it was a staple of the game. Managers were immediately ejected for arguing balls and strikes. It was sacred territory. Home plate was holier than now. Disagreeing with the strike zone was worse than taking the Lord's name in vain. But now we have AI. Now we have the eye in the sky. Now we have a way with precision accuracy in a moment's notice, in a second, to figure out balls and strikes. It's time for the umpires to move on from this archaic system. The eye in the sky don't lie. It is essential that we get these basics right. We're in a new era of sports. Gambling is involved. Scandals are involved. We cannot have C.B. Buckner butchering the strike zone 8 times in one game. We have a way to fix this quickly, efficiently. I'm not saying get rid of umpires. I'm saying they have a lot of other things that they can be doing throughout the course of the game behind the plate besides calling balls and strikes. It is too difficult for them to handle this. The moment has become too big for the umpires to continue calling balls and strikes. And then you have umpires coming out and saying they're going to be humiliated. All right, well, let's remove that humiliation. Now the robots will do it. It's the first of many jobs that the robots will take from humans in the next however many years. But I just think we've moved past it as a society. And it's not a difficult. It'd be one thing if we had to wait every second, multiple seconds, 5, 10, 15 seconds after every pitch to figure out if the ball is a strike or if it's a ball. But we don't have to do that now. It's instant. Instant. I think it's time that we remove that responsibility from the umpires. And based on how things went this week for C.B. Buckner, it's going to be a long year for him. All right, that's really all I got for you this week. Next week, we'll wrap up the Final Four. I'll give you my pick for the national championship game, and then we will officially turn the page to the NFL draft. What does that mean? I'm going to give you probably a position group every week. We'll start with the quarterbacks. We'll go to the offensive skill guys, right? Those are the sexy positions. And then as we get closer to the draft, I might do a mock draft where I do my top 10. I don't know. I'll figure out some fun draft content to kind of spin things towards over the next few weeks. And, of course, the NFL draft at the end of next month. That's going to be my main focus. And then really we'll gear up with the NFL. I mean, I might throw in some random storylines, some headlines that come across that I'm interested in. But I think now that we've gotten through March Madness and we're kind of turning the page towards the draft, I think the NFL will get back into the focus. We'll keep the main thing. And that's going to be where we stand as we move forward. Please continue to support the podcast. Please subscribe to the newsletter. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please sign up for the Patreon. Do all of the things. Click all of the buttons. We're doing some good work. We're having a profitable tournament. Hopefully these Crown bets come through this week, and we'll continue to push our college basketball record into the positive. I'm having fun doing this, guys. I mean, I would love to get another episode throughout the week in there, but right now, once a week feels like the right cadence for this. If I desire to push this to a second episode per week, I might do it, but I also don't want to overindulge. I don't want to oversaturate the market with my opinions. I don't want to oversaturate with my clips and all the headlines. There's plenty of opinions out there. I tweet out shit all the time. You don't need to hear from me and see me every day. I think that's a little vain, especially considering this is pro bono. So I'm not making any money from this. I'm doing this out of the goodness of my own heart because I love doing this content and I love sharing my insights and my opinions with you, and I've gotten some positive feedback. So we'll keep things rolling. And next week, it will be episode 30. 30 episodes of this. It's been a fun ride so far, and we're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to push forward. So that'll do it for this week's episode of The Morning After. I appreciate you tuning in, and we will catch you next week for the Final Four and the National Championship.